She did not fall so much as fold, knees giving slow under weight of sun and dread, each surrender scattering dust that clung like ash to torn skirts. 30 steps earlier, she vowed the next collapse would be her last. Now she lay silent in the dry road, blood weeping through cracked soles, pulse drumming out a single wish. No more faces of men who knew her value only in silver. Wind breathed sage and iron, a scent that stung memory awake long enough to show her brother's empty chair, her mother's silent doorway, and the night a gambler marked her debt with a lazy grin. She inhaled that scent once, felt its scorched lungs too parched for prayer, and closed her eyes to finish dying. Boot steps entered the hush, measured, unhurried, as though the stranger had weighed every grain of heat before placing his heel. A horse snorted behind him, tack creaking. He stopped short of her reach, shadow falling across fluttering lashes. For a heartbeat, nothing moved but the shimmer of mirage. Then he knelt, hat tipping enough to bear weather-lined eyes the dry color of creek stones. His face registered neither shock nor pity, only a craftsman's attention to a tool in disrepair. Without speaking, he slid one arm beneath her shoulders, the other beneath knees flayed raw, lifting as if she were made of rye stalks. A gasp tore free, more surprise than pain. The stranger set her gently into the saddle, adjusted stirrup leathers lower so swollen feet could rest, then removed his hat in a gesture older than apology. Dust swirled, waiting to settle on a verdict. He gave none. He simply looped the reins over his wrist and began to walk, boots crunching in cadence with the horse's patient breaths. She clung to the horn, vision splintering under white glare. Each jolt sent fire-up calves, but the steady rhythm of his stride, 4 steps to every sway of the mare, drew her focus like a metronome. He offered a dented canteen. The metal burned lips, yet water ran cool, tasting of tin and distant mountains. She drank until cough cut swallow, then allowed the stranger to tie the canteen near her hand with a frayed length of rawhide. Hours passed, measured by landmarks of thirst. A sun-bleached telegraph pole singing one broken note, the wrecked skeleton of a stagecoach wheel half buried in grit, a scatter of coyote bones picked clean. Heat built walls around thought, but she noted how the stranger paused at each fragment, as though mapping threat against mercy. When they reached the shadow of an eroded butte, he halted. With slow care, he lifted her down, laid a blanket across coarse ground, and sat beside her to 10 feet. Bandages became strips torn from his own undershirt. Salve smelled of sheep fat and desert mint. Pain flared, receded, left a cool ache almost sweet. High afternoon scythed across sky. The stranger brewed weak coffee over a thumb-sized fire, using a blackened tin no larger than a child's fist. Steam smelled like distant rain. She sipped once, grateful and startled that bitterness could taste like hope. He drank second, eyes on the horizon where heat rippled dunes into palaces of glass. Between them hung silence thick as rawhide, yet not cruel. She searched for words to fill it, found only a name she had not spoken since she fled. Marisol. He nodded once, answering with his own. Rhett. Names exchanged without claim. They pressed on. Marisol rode with chin lifted higher now, lids half closed against glare, but mind keen on every shift of Rhett's shoulders. He kept the mare between himself and the sun, shielding her with his own shadow. At one dry creek, he paused to heap stones over a rattler, crushed by flash flood. At another, he righted a fallen survey stake, as if the order of things mattered even here. That quiet maintenance of the world's torn edges stitched something inside her, she thought, beyond repair. Dusk unfolded rose and gold. A line shack appeared, door sagging, roof caved on one side. Rhett guided the mare inside what remained of the corral, loosened girth, brushed her with handfuls of straw. He motioned Marisol toward the open doorway, where cooler air pooled. She stepped carefully, bandaged feet pressing splinters of shadow. Inside lay a cracked water barrel still quarter full. Rhett dipped, tasted, deemed it clean enough, then filled a tin cup for her. She drank slow, feeling grit settle out of veins. He lit a stub of candle stub anchored in a horseshoe, its flames shaking mild light over broken walls. From a pocket, he produced a stub of pencil and a folded scrap of paper, writing 2 lines she could not see. He tore the sheet, set it on the sill where moonlight would find it, weighting it with a nail. A message for any rider following, a warning or a plea. She never asked. They shared jerky that tasted of salt and cedar smoke. When she shifted, grimace betraying ache, Rhett spread his bedroll across the least broken plank floor, motioned for her to lie. He took station by the doorway, rifle propped on knee, eyes half-lidded yet vigilant. During darkest watch, a coyote yipped. Close. Rhett answered with a low whistle. The animal fell silent, offended. Marisol, hovering between dream and fever, whispered why he walked instead of riding. He replied softly that a man on a horse looks over the world. A man beside it can feel the ground's warnings. She let the idea settle like balm. Just before dawn, candles stuttered out. The east rim glowed pale. Rhett fetched kettle embers outside where sky smelled of rain that might never arrive, and stoked new flame. Marisol forced stiff legs under her, shuffling toward him. She touched his wrist. Thanks, question, promise indistinct. He met her gaze, saw no plea for rescue, only the fierce spark of someone ready to survive again. Sun crested. He boosted her into the saddle, cinched girth, checked bindings on her wounds. She noticed he had split the last length of bandage to wrap his own blistered heels. Silent symmetry. They set off toward a distant rise dusted with juniper, her weight swaying less with each mile, his stride unfaltering though boot prints dark and crimson at the edges. 3 miles later, she felt the first cool breath of higher land on her cheeks. She lifted the canteen, offered it down to him. Rhett drank, wiped mouth with back of hand, and for the first time smiled. Not wide, but enough to catch sunlight in creases formed by a life mostly unsmiled. Ahead, a faint thread of smoke curled above the juniper ridge. Shelter or danger, they would find it together. The rhythm of hoof and foot had already chosen the path, and neither had reason or desire to step aside. Dawn widened into a pale gold road. Memory of yesterday rode in silence. A man walking beside his horse, a woman lifted from dust, blood and water traded for promise, smoke now beckoning from a distant ridge. Juniper opened like a sparse garden, each twisted trunk perfuming the air with resin and rain ghosts. The mare's hooves clicked on hidden stones. Rhett's boots pressed new stories into moist soil, the crimson at their edges darkening, then fading as blood dried. Closer, smoke resolved into a thin thread rising from a stone chimney half buried in hillside. No corral, no fresh wagon ruts, just silence and the hush of birds choosing caution over song. Rhett signaled halt, one finger to brim. Marisol steadied in the saddle, reading the tension in his shoulders the way one reads a sky before storm. He moved ahead, crouched low, rifle cradled but muzzle down. Not hunting, only ready if hunted. The cabin door sagged from a single leather hinge, interior smelling of ash, long cold. Yet in the hearth, coals pulsed faint red, a heart refusing final rest. On a rough table lay a pot still steaming, 2 tin plates wiped clean, but not stacked. Rhett touched the kettle. Heat licked fingertips. Minutes, not hours. Whoever cooked stood near or watched from shadow. Marisol eased down, pain merely a memory muted by the lavender soak of night before. She traced the table's scratched initials. A and E carved shallow, hurried. A child's wooden doll lay broken beside, arm missing. She felt cold bloom behind sternum. Rhett scanned corners, found no bodies, no blood. Only absence weighted like lead. Outside, wind fluttered a rag of blue cloth caught on a fence post. He unpinned it. A woman's apron, torn, one patch missing. A torch of orange thread matched the scrap sewn into Marisol's skirt hem. Coincidence stung, then shivered into warning. A creak from slope above. Foot on loose slate. Rhett wheeled, rifle rising, but a figure slid into view. Young, gangly, hat too large, eyes feral with terror. In his shaking grip, a shotgun big as he was. Rhett lowered rifle first, gesture of peace. Boy's breath hitched, muzzle wavered between man and woman. Marisol stepped forward, palms open. Words slow, Spanish lilted. No queremos daño. The boy blinked, shotgun drooping. Tears cut fresh trails down dirt-crusted cheeks. Name tumbled out, Emilio, in a story unfolded in fractured English. Mother gone 2 days for help. Father dead months from snakebite. Little sister sick inside cave spring. Smoke signal was mother's idea. Safe fire to draw passing riders. Yesterday, 3 men came instead, took food, promised more return. Emilio hid, heart pounding, waited through night. Now strangers stood where danger had been. He glanced at shotgun as if ashamed, then handed it butt first to Rhett. Decision flashed in Rhett's eyes. He accepted weapon gently, set it aside. Together they climbed narrow goat trail to cave mouth veiled by juniper. Inside, cool damp air and the muffled cough of a child. Candela, no more than 7, cheeks flushed with fever, eyes dull. Marisol knelt, her own pain forgotten, checking pulse the way her mother once taught on village veranda. Rhett struck match, examined water trickling from stone fissure. Clean, cold. He brewed willow bark shavings from his satchel, added a pinch of salt scraped from his pocket. Candela sipped, whimpering, yet color returned slow as dawn on mountaintop. From cave mouth, Emilio called sudden warning. Dust column on southern flats, 3 riders pushing hard, the same who stole yesterday. Rhett's rifle found his shoulder. Marisol's heartbeat found a drum. Emilio loaded single shell into shotgun, eyes no longer feral but carved of resolve. Rhett led them outside, positioned behind fallen log at slope edge. Marisol reloaded rifle from belt rounds, hands surprising steady. She remembered gambler's grin, fists, the road. Now she aimed not at past but future. Riders split, 1 angled toward cabin, 2 higher up canyon. First reached clearing, dismounted, swaggered to door. Emilio's breath shook. Rhett's finger tightened, then eased. Too soon. Cabin thief kicked door, cursed at emptiness, turned toward cave slope. Sun flashed on revolver. Rhett fired. Shot echoed between stone walls. Rider spun, fell into dust. Horse bolted, screaming. The other 2 spurred uphill. Marisol's round snapped branch near Lead Rider's ear. He ducked, returned fire wildly. Bullets chipped rock above Candela's shelter. Rhett rolled, drew the pistol he'd taken from Gambler weeks back, flanked left along ravine lip. Second rider advanced careless into crossfire. Rhett's round struck the horse's shoulder. Beast toppled, trapping its rider beneath. Dust rose, screaming followed. Third outlaw reined back, courage unsown. He turned downhill, spurring away, but Marisol chambered final round. Breathed memory of every road-borne bruise. Squeezed. Bullet tore hat from his skull, a warning written in wind. He fled south, dust curling like a torn flag. Silence resettled, broken only by horses' ragged breath. Emilio approached the pinned outlaw, shotgun shaking. Rhett placed a hand on boy's shoulder, lowered barrel. Mercy walked heavier than vengeance, but left softer tracks. They freed the injured horse, bound outlaw's wound, stripped him of ammo. Afternoon leaned golden. Marisol wiped soot from Candela's brow, felt fever ebb. Emilio fetched blankets from cabin, eyes bright with something like belief. Rhett cleaned rifles, buried dead thief beyond cottonwood line. Cairn of 3 stones marking a man unmade by greed. As sun dipped, mother's silhouette appeared on ridge, stumbling beneath waterskins. She dropped them at sight of strangers, fear blooming. Candela's laugh, small, hoarse, floated up. Mother's knees buckled with relief. Reunion painted the hillside amber. They spent night in cabin, roof mended with juniper boughs. Bread dough rose under Marisol's hands, Emilio grinding corn, Candela asleep at last without fever dream. Rhett penned new note for passing riders. Safe now. Keep riding. He nailed it to door at dawn. Before leaving, Mother pressed a woven sash into Marisol's palms. Blue like river under moon, stitches of orange torch matching skirt. Gift bound by gratitude. Marisol tied it round her waist, felt its weight light as dawn. They rode north again. Marisol healed enough to share saddle time. Rhett mounted behind, hands guiding reins but light on her hips. Valley widened ahead, grass brushing mare's belly, clouds scattering like scared cattle across open sky. A hawk rode thermals, cry echoing promise. Marisol turned, saw Rhett's face softer than bleached leather could permit. Sun carving hope where caution once lived. She touched the stone at his chest pocket, felt its warmth through cloth, then faced horizon. Trails forked there, But whichever they chose would carry two sets of footprints, equal in dust and dawn. Trail dust quickened beneath the mare's hooves, each stride easing Marisol deeper into the curve of saddle and horizon. Rhett walked beside, hat brim tilted to watch both sky and ground, boots punching rhythm into damp earth reawakened by yesterday's rain. Dawn folded into mid-morning, light fine as silt fanning across new grass. Somewhere behind, the cabin shrank to memory, three cairn stones glinting, smoke curling lazy but safe. Ahead, valley poured north until it kissed the low blue rim of mountains neither had seen before. A small river surfaced near noon, clear, fast, skipping over black shale shelves. They watered the mare, then crossed ankle-deep, boots cooling, bandages wetting through without pain. Marisol laughed at the cold. The sound startled quail from sage. Rhett lifted an eyebrow, half-smile etching crow's feet that felt foreign on his skin, yet right. She knelt to refill canteen, water purling on sun-browned arms healed to new strength. When she rose, he noted her footing. Steady, sure. The road had given back her feet, if not yet all of her faith. By afternoon, they rode together for the first time. He swung up behind, reins light, mare easing into a ground-covering trot. His chest against her spine felt less like possession, more like covenant. Hands at her waist rested, guiding only when stones jutted. Wide plain unspooled beneath, dotted with cattle herds grazing under the lazy guardianship of distant riders. No one looked close. Two figures on one horse drew less suspicion than a wounded woman and a man on foot. A stand of cottonwoods marked break for the mare. They dismounted where cool shade carried river hush. Marisol opened the woven sash, spread bread, and jerked rabbit on blanket edge. Rhett produced the last of Ellen's honey in a corked vial. Amber light dripped onto bread, sweet glimmer over hard miles. They ate slow. Bees wandered, tasting air, leaving. When meal finished, Rhett laid out the map Ellen had inked. Thin trails penciled like veins across foothills. Two safer passes suggested, but a handwritten note in corner warned of marshalling railroad guards near the eastern spur. He traced his finger west instead, valley of cotton and mesquite edging to fertile canyons beyond. Marisol watched, then touched the same line, nodding without need of words. Decision settled between them, like dust after hooffall. Before setting off, she drew the heart-shaped stone from his pocket, thumb whirring its smooth edge. She pressed it into his palm, curling his fingers closed, then closed her own hand around his. For a long breath they remained thus, a silent promise sealed in granite and skin. He opened fingers only to pocket the stone again, now a compass requiring neither North Star nor railroad milepost. Sun slipped lower, their shadows lengthened twin across prairie gold. At a fork where telegraph poles veered east, they left rails behind, angling toward mesa foothills bathed in copper. Cooling air smelled of lupine. Thunderheads stalked high altitudes but held their water. They came upon a fence line freshly mended, its cedar posts pale as peeled bone. A lone cowhand paused hammerwork, tipping brim in greeting. Red exchanged three calm words: water, distance, storms, then pressed a coin into the man's rough palm. The hand pointed them toward a canyon mouth shaped like a sleeping horse's head, said grazing was sweet on the other side, and springs never failed. Evening blue pooled in canyon floor. They led the mare through twists of volcanic walls streaked ash rose by sunset. Coyote prints patterned damp sand, yet no howl broke the hush. Predators fed well after rain and had no need for songs tonight. Marisol's steps grew slower. Rhett cupped her elbow, guiding her to sit when nightfall spilled black. A small alcove opened in cliff, wide enough for horse and blanket. He stoked cedar twigs. Flame climbed, painting rock with restless gold. Wind funneled warm down canyon, and the world felt briefly domed in safety. They shared coffee, brewed thin to stretch grounds. Steam rose into starlight. Marisol pulled the sash free, draped it between them, orange stitches glowing like ember script. She spoke then of home she left beyond desert's southern edge, of adobe walls painted turquoise, of sisters braiding hair under pomegranate trees, of a father who gambled their seasons away. Words flowed slow but sure, weaving across flame into Rhett's waiting quiet. In return, he spoke of a war that ended yet never released its drumbeat in his head, of brothers buried so far east he doubted they rested, and of the long walk west begun with no purpose until dust offered a woman who would not rise again without help. Silence followed, but it no longer weighed. It breathed. He shifted closer. She leaned until shoulder met shoulder, heat of skin gentler than fire. Stars crowded canyon mouth, shards of glass scattered on black velvet. She named a few in Spanish. He answered with their military titles: North Star, Archer, Hunter's Belt. Between languages, the constellations knitted a roof. Sleep crept in pulses. He insisted on first watch, but her hand on his wrist tethered him. "No wolves tonight," she said, voice half lullaby. He obeyed, lying back, gaze fixed on drifting sparks, until lids closed unbidden. She woke later to stir coals, stare at his quiet face softer in ember light, wonder how trust could ride so far so fast. Dawn bled pale vermilion when a distant train whistle floated faint over ridges. Its call sounded small now, powerless. They saddled early, canyon walls glowing peach. On the crest, an ocean of tall grass awaited, heads shimmering silver in breeze. The mare perked ears, tasting freedom. Rhett mounted, offered hand. Marisol took it, swung up behind, feet almost steady now in new boots. He asked with glance if she wished to ride or walk. She answered by nudging the mare herself. He laughed low, gathered reins, and they set off at canter into grass that swallowed hooves to fetlock. Wind roared playful in their ears. Marisol pressed cheek to Rhett's back, braids snapping, laughter carried off in gusts until it felt endless. In that rush, the desert behind seemed a tale told by someone else. They reined at ridges far drop where valley unfurled fertile and green, dotted by orchard rows and creek glitter. Smoke rose from homestead chimneys small as matches. No bounty riders, no gamblers' debts, no rusted wagons of loss. He pointed to a stand of cottonwoods shading clear water, first camp of new country. She leaned forward, arms lodging round his middle, breath soft with yes. Together they guided the mare down slope, two sets of footprints no longer separate. Horse, man, woman tracing a single line the storm could not erase, toward a horizon wide enough to contain all names they had left behind, and all names they had yet to claim. Grass parted around the mare like a slow tide, stems brushing stirrups, whispering secrets of springs long hidden beneath rock. Yesterday's miles echoed in her ribs, gunfire at a cabin, fever cooled in lavender water, a blue-stitched sash tying a vow. Morning now shimmered over a valley greener than any Marisol remembered, its creeks veining silver between orchards, cottonwoods clustered like small republics of shade. The land smelled of wet clay and wild alfalfa, a scent so thick it dulled the memory of dust and rope. Rhett guided the mare downslope, reins loose, trusting the animal to pick sure footing. Every few beats he glanced back, not to watch for pursuit but to reassure himself she still rode behind him. Not a dream, not an echo left in desert light. At the creek's edge they dismounted. Marisol knelt, cupped water that ran cold enough to sting healed skin, tasted quartz and moss, felt her pulse answer in gratitude. Rhett watered the mare, then unsaddled her, letting the animal roll in soft mud. He glanced at sun's angle, mid-morning, and cast eye on a stand of walnuts uphill. "Shelter," he said. One word carried promise of rest without walls. They led the mare through blooming milkweed thrumming with monarchs. Wings brushed Marisol's braid like blessings. Under the walnuts lay a dilapidated line cabin. Roof sagged but intact. Porch half-eaten by termites, an iron stove still upright beside buckled hearthstones. A broken yoke leaned against the railing, carved with twin initials. J.M. She traced them, wondered who had once loved enough to notch letters into wood. Inside smelled of mouse nests and old tobacco, but through a cracked pane roamed sweet orchard breeze. Rhett propped door, began clearing nests, sweeping cobwebs with a sage broom he fashioned from scrub. Marisol unfolded the blanket, shook it in sunlight, spread it near the stove. For a moment they worked without speech, two rhythms sanding edges of the past into livable wood. When cabin felt less like ruin, Rhett fetched jerky and last biscuits. Marisol steeped creek water with wild mint, using the tin cup as kettle. They ate on the porch step where sunlight dappled through walnut leaves, each swallow anchoring them to reality flesh and not mirage. While they chewed, a distant hammer rang, metal on metal, from far side of Orchard Grove. Rhett's gaze narrowed. Work sounds, not gunfire. He stood, scanned tree rows. Through branches he glimpsed a barn, fresh paint red against green, and a figure atop ladder repairing roof shingles. Neighbors, he murmured. Trusting instinct, he whistled once. Clear, neutral. The figure paused, shielded eyes, then waved slow. Good sign. Rhett returned gesture, but did not beckon. Afternoon ripened slow. They mended cabin door, replaced rotten hinge with saddle rivets. Marisol stitched a curtain from blue sash ends and scrap of her torn skirt, hanging it before cracked pane to temper western glare. Rhett scouted perimeter, found blackberry thicket heavy with fruit, vines bowed by summer weight. He returned with hat brim brimming, hands stained violet. Marisol laughed, mouth purple after first handful. Juice trickled down her wrist. Rhett caught drop with calloused thumb, tasted joy darker than honey. Toward dusk, the orchard's owner arrived on a buckskin gelding, an older woman in rawhide vest, hair braided silver and black, revolver holstered but strap buttoned. She reined short, glanced over cabin, mare, strangers. Rhett stepped forward, palms visible, introduced them in calm drawl, travelers seeking rest, offering fence work and trade. The woman, Aunt Mercy, she called herself, though blood kin to none, studied their worn boots, bandaged feet, rifles slung in peace position. Finally, she dismounted, offered a mason jar of cider. Squatters get shot, she said. Helpers get stew. Marisol nodded. Arrangement clear as creek water. That night they ate stew thick with rabbit and barley, seated at rough plank table Mercy kept beneath arbor of grapevines. Lantern hung from cross-beam painted faces amber. Mercy spoke little, but her questions slipped between sips. Any law chasing you? Any plague in your saddle blanket? Red answered steady. Marisol added truth where silence might breed doubt. Satisfaction showed in Mercy's grunt. She pointed fork at cabin. J.M. carved by Jane and Miriam, school teachers who tried orchard life, left for city after winter floods. They wouldn't mind new names on porch. The words felt like witness and welcome. After meal, Mercy produced 2 clay mugs, filled with peach brandy older than her wrinkles. Marisol sipped, warmth blooming chest. Rhett drank slow, eyes reflecting lantern flame and something softer, relief uncoiling. Mercy leaned back, boots on stump. Need hands pruning? Fences mended before frost, she said. Stay season, earn a stake, ride on, come snowbreak. Offer stood like doorway to a room neither had imagined, yet both suddenly yearned to enter. Under moonlit walnuts they discussed in whispers. Marisol traced calloused palm across Rhett's, the skin etched like weather maps of every mile he'd walked beside her. Roots for a season, she whispered. He answered with a squeeze, pulse drumming answer older than language. Next morning work began. Rhett hauled cedar rails, resetting boundary Mercy marked with red rag flags. Marisol climbed ladder barefoot, pruning water shoots from apricot limbs, balanced steady despite memory of bleeding feet. She learned song of orchard, snip, thud of branch, flutter of sparrow wings. Rhett's hammer found rhythm with her clipping, 2 instruments tuning the same field. Days slipped into pattern, no bullet cracked. She rose before dawn, brewed mint, carried pail of water to saplings. He followed with feed for mare, salt lick for goat Mercy kept. Midday heat drove them to creek where they washed sweat and fruit juice from skin, laughing when minnows nipped toes. Nights they shared stories with Mercy, tales of gospel camps, border markets, redwood logging camps, each story chipped into firelit logs. Week 3 brought test, trio of riders sporting silver stars, county deputies seeking stolen livestock sign. They eyed Rhett's rifle, Marisol's healing steps, asked names. Mercy answered first. Hired hands, mine. Deputies accepted cider, tongues loosened. They spoke of rustlers branding calves with acid south of river. No mention of bounties for desert fugitives. Deputies tipped hats, rode on, leaving dust undone. Relief sighed through orchard. Evenings, Marisol reopened sash-made curtain, letting last light-striped cabin floor. She set nettle fiber into loom borrowed from Mercy, weaving new cloth, warp of blue, weft of orange reminiscent of torch patch once sewn over wound. Rhett read from an almanac, Mercy gifted, rain charts, star tables, planning irrigation ditches. Sometimes they danced slow to gramophone Mercy had rescued from barn loft, needle tracing cracked vinyl's ghost music while walnuts rustled overhead. Moon waxed fat. Marisol's feet healed to scar lines soft as memory. Rhett's boots mended with fresh leather Mercy supplied, soles sewn by Marisol's nimble fingers. One dusk, while evening star pinned sky, Rhett led her to the porch where JM initials weathered deeper. He produced his knife, carved MR below, not for ownership, but for record. Marisol and Rhett, autumn 1887. She pressed her palm against letters, felt wood warm under skin. Harvest came. They loaded wagon with crates of apples gleaming crimson and gold, drove to Valley Fair, where produce fetched coin gleaming even brighter. Mercy split profit 3 ways. Marisol held her share, heart pounding, weight of future in silver. Rhett's share he tucked beneath saddle blanket. Hers she braided into the loomcloth's hem, seed money stitched to hope. Yet peace proved fragile. On second trip to fair, they overheard saloon talk. A gambler newly arrived, bragging of a desert debt, brandished torn photograph of a woman mid-20s, eyes dark as promise. Marisol's throat closed. Rhett's jaw nodded. They left before whiskey sharpened tongues into recognition, but behind them rumor sprouted legs. That night, under walnut shadows wet with harvest dew, they weighed coin in danger. Mercy leaned on porch rail listening. Past keeps long strides, she warned, but trees teach, prune what steals the fruit. Plan rooted, they'd ride at dawn with crates to railhead farther west, sell, board train north through mountains. Money buys distance, distance buys living. Marisol packed loomcloth around coins, heartstone tucked inside. Rhett saddled mare, strapped Mercy's gift, a new Winchester to scabbard. Before first light they hugged Mercy, promised to write carved into silence. Walnuts dropped around them like green bullets of farewell. Road back to Valley Fair lay quiet, but dust plume rose from south, one rider pacing them unseen. Sun climbed, shadows shortened. At Ridge Cut, Rhett halted, glass trail with borrowed spyglass. Gambler's duster flared behind horse, rifle sling at saddle, distance shrinking. They spurred mare, wagon creaked under load. Gambler closed. Shots rang, warning first, then pursuit loud. Orchard crates rattled, apples tumbling red into dust. Marisol crouched behind bench, returned fire with Mercy's Winchester. Round split Gambler's hat brim, slowed him. Rhett flicked reins, wheels bouncing over ruts. Gambler's second shot snapped trace line. Wagon lurched. Marisol leaped down, slashed remaining harness, screamed at mare. Horse bolted, Rhett in saddle. Wagon skidded, overturned, apples exploding like bloody suns. Marisol rolled clear, cloth bundle clutched. Gambler circled, laughing. Rhett wheeled, charged. Gunfire cracked canyon echo. Dust hid outcome. Only thudding hoofbeats, panting breath, distant hawk cry. When haze cleared, Gambler lay face down, coin glittering from torn coat. Rhett knelt, blood streaking arm but stance solid. Marisol ran, pressed cloth to wound, graze deep but clean. She bound it with sash ends, blew upon Rhett again. They left wagons smashed, coins safe in cloth, and rode hard west while sun tipped. Behind them lay Orchard Valley, their carved initials on porch. 3 weeks of peace. Ahead, mountains jagged as new hope, train tracks glinting like hammered silver. Wind in their hair tasted of pine now, not dust. She leaned into his back, whispered the line she'd whispered once before. Light belongs to open roads. He answered, voice rough with pain yet sure. And roads belong to us. Hooves found rhythm, distance opened, and the horizon widened enough for 2 names carved in walnut to grow into legend beyond any gambler's deck. Gray mountain shoulders rose ahead, their snow-flecked caps glittering like forgotten coins in dawn's first light. Frost bit the mare's breath into ghosts, each exhale twisting behind as evidence of miles shed. Marisol pressed closer to Rhett's back, fingers feeling the warmth that radiated through his duster, even after yesterday's gunfire and breakneck flight. Blood had dried on the fabric, but the bandage beneath stayed clean. Every hoofbeat confirmed the wound's shallow mercy. They followed the abandoned logging road that Mercy's map marked in faded ink. Ruts softened by spring melt, flanked by young pines. Sunlight sifted between branches, dappling the mare's hide with moving gold. Higher on the slope, a ribbon of steel glinted through firs. The mountain spur line Hale had said ran once a day, westbound, midday. If they reached the siding before noon, distance would become locomotive strong, cutting all gambling debts from behind. By mid-morning, they found the siding, little more than a water tower leaning into the wind, and a cracked platform where pitch pine boards curled at the edges. No station agent, no benches, just stillness and the scent of creosote. Rhett dismounted, led the mare behind the tower's shadow, rubbed her neck, whispering thanks. Marisol rested on a crate, loom-cloth bundle heavy in her lap, coins hidden within, the heartstone tucked at its center. Wind hissed through telegraph wires. Minutes lengthened, each one taut with expectation. Then at last the rail seemed to shiver. Distant whistle, low, mournful, bloomed into the valley. Smoke plume rose behind the ridge, spreading like an ink stain on pale sky. Momentum growled nearer, wheel clicked, turning from murmur to thunder. Rhett squeezed Marisol's shoulder once, wordlessly. She inhaled the engine's coal-sweet breath, tasting freedom mixed with cinder. The train slowed, brakes shrieking, iron coughing. 2 freight cars, a mail car, and at the rear a single passenger coach dappled with rust. The conductor climbed down, bowler hat, wool coat frayed, eyes narrowing at the couple, then warming in faint recognition of the Quaker letter Rhett produced. He read, nodded. Short hop west, transfer at Broken Pass by dusk. Pay in coin or in kind. Marisol untied her cloth, placed 3 silver pieces in the conductor's calloused palm, folding his fingers closed like a quiet bargain. He tipped his hat, stepped aside. Rhett led the mare to the livestock flat car, helped her up the ramp, set hay from a barrel into the stall, patted her flank. She whickered, calm now that the road would move beneath her. Marisol stood on the platform, loom cloth re-knotted, breath fogging the morning air. Rhett took her hand, guided her to coach steps. Inside smelled of pine pitch and old sweat, benches scarred by years of boots. Only one other passenger, a miner asleep, arms wrapped round pick handle. Rhett and Marisol sat near rear door, packs at their feet. Conductor's whistle blew once, a bird call breaking silence, and the train lurched, couplers clanking. Valley slid backward, pines siding, the leaning tower shrinking until it dissolved into forest. Rhythm settled, iron hum against rail seams, steam hiss exhaling between hills. Marisol traced shapes on frosted glass, low loops that became mountains, then broke into free lines. Rhett unfolded Mercy's map again, though destination was set. Habit of men who once marched by coordinates. She took pencil from his vest, added new mark, a tiny walnut leaf where Orchard had cradled their first piece. He smiled, small, tender, and folded map away, as if the memory itself were safe once inked. Midday engine paused at a switchback to cool bearings. Marisol stepped to vestibule, watching steam plume into fur-scented air. Rhett joined, arm circling her waist, protective, not possessive. Down the line, a fox trotted between rail ties, stopped, stared amber-eyed, then vanished into brush. She whispered that running sometimes leads back to living. Rhett answered that walking beside another can feel like taking flight. Words barely touched wind before drifting away. At Broken Pass, siding sun leaned red toward peaks. Conductor signaled transfer freight idling on opposite track. 3 boxcars and a caboose. No towns, no agents, just towering granite blushing under late light. They led the mare across cinder path, loaded her again. This train smelled of fresh lumber, headed west to a coastal mill. Engineer, a broad man with wheeze in his laugh, welcomed them in exchange for guarding cargo, while crew slept between tunnels. Rhett agreed. Nights of century had shaped his bones. Twilight tunneled into full dark, while locomotive fought grade through granite throat. Car lantern flickered yellow over pine boards. Rhett patrolled narrow aisles, rifle slung loose, wound in arm whispering with each sway, but never roaring. Marisol rested on burlap grain sacks, cloth bundle beneath her head, heartstone pressing cool through fabric into her cheek. Steam whistle echoed inside the mountain like a giant heartbeat amplified. At last the grade eased. Air grew damp, tasting faintly of salt and distant rivers. Dawn smoldered violet beyond crate slats. Tracks snaked through coastal foothills where redwoods shadowed morning sky. Engine slowed at a water stop, nameboard blank, only deer prints in damp loam proving life visited. Crew stretched, thanked Rhett, invited the travelers to ride on as far as the sawmill town. He declined gently. The hush under redwoods called like cathedral bells. Here maybe, coins could buy a patch of soil, tools, seeds. Orchard seedlings, Marisol mused, might take root even where fog hovers. They unloaded mare, stepping onto soil dark as midnight coffee. Steam hissed farewell. Train rattled on, shrinking to a hum mingled with wood thrush song. Sun climbed through giant trunks, beams angling into this fresh piece of map. Rhett lifted Marisol onto the mare. Her boots found stirrups without wince. He walked, hand-guiding reins, eyes scanning the deep hush that smelled of fern and cedar spice. Mid-morning they came to a clearing beside a creek so clear each pebble shone. Wild gooseberries dotted bank, crimson against green. Rhett reached for her hand. Land seems unspoken for. She nodded, slid down, feet steady. They unpacked loom cloth, coins spilling into his palm. Enough to buy title once they reached mill office a day's ride north. Marisol laid the stone on a sun-warmed stump, palm over its smooth face. "This stays here," she said. "Root for the house to grow." Rhett covered her hand with his, the two palms sealing granite to earth. Creek sang, wind combed redwood crowns, and silence settled not as warning, but as welcome. They unsaddled the mare, let her graze new grass. Marisol knelt by water, washing journey dust from cheeks, braid loosening. Rhett stacked flat river stones into a low hearth. She set gathered gooseberries on a clean leaf, juice glistening. They worked without hurry, each motion laying first bricks of a life not borrowed. When evening painted trunks copper, Rhett struck flint, fire crackled, smoke spiraled into canopy. They ate berries and hard bread, softened in creek water. Stars winked between foliage gaps, distant lanterns reminding that roads still ran, but none pressed on their spine tonight. Marisol unfolded Mercy's cloth curtain, now patched with new blue strips from her woven loom. She strung it between two saplings, a promise of walls yet to rise. Rhett unrolled blanket, laid it beneath. He sat, leaning against trunk, watching flame dance on her face. She met his gaze, the reflection of fire and future bright in dark eyes. No words, only breath shared. Moon-crested ridge. Owls called, claiming territory. In that hush, Rhett reached, brushed a strand of hair from Marisol's cheek. She leaned forward, touched scar on his brow. Silent recognition of storm survived. They kissed soft, ember warmth beneath redwood night, sealing journey into belonging. Far off, trains still sang over rails. Gamblers still flipped cards. Bounty riders still hunted easy prey. But under towering trees, two travelers built a hearth from stones and trust, forging home from foot-splintered roads and miles walked beside a steady horse. Here, light belonged to clearing, laughter to dusk, stories to quiet evenings when no one needed to speak to be heard. If this tale rode into your heart, rustle up a like, hit yourself with subscribe, and tell us in the comments which moments set your spirit riding and what stories you'd like me to track down on the next trail.